Don't die with your music still in you. And that is the quote of the day. Welcome back to the Quote of the Day show. I'm your host, Sean Croxton of SeanCroxton.com. Today's featured speaker is Dr. Wayne Dyer, and this is definitely my favorite one of the entire week, and it really requires no introduction. Here's Dr. Dyer.
These great people, these what I think of as geniuses, had certain qualities, these self-actualizing people that Maslow referred to and that I have chosen to highlight here in this program. One of the people that I highlighted in Wisdom of the Ages is Michelangelo. Another is Leonardo da Vinci. And another is Mother Teresa. And another is Emerson. And another is Buddha. And another is Jesus. And another is Omar Khayyam, a tent maker. They all had various ways of doing and expressing who they were and what they wanted to say. They lived in different times, some in what we call ancient times, some in Middle Ages times, some in the Renaissance period, some in the Victorian period, some in contemporary America and the Western world. But all of them had within them this genius. And they weren't afraid to say it, to acknowledge it. And one of the things I'm very fond of saying to audiences is that not one of these people that you'll hear highlighted here in this program, not one of them died with their music still in them. And don't you. Don't you. Don't you get to the place at the end of your life where you're lying there like Ivan Illich and you ask the question that terrifies me when I think about it: what if my whole life has been wrong? Khalil Gibran said, when you are born, your work is placed in your heart. There is music in you. That music may be in the form of artwork. It may be in the form of putting together a golf course. It may be figuring out a way to raise children in daycare centers. It might be to invent a chip for a computer. It might be to raise horses in Montana or to become a horse whisperer. Whatever it is, you have a connection to it. And the wisdom of the ages, or the wisdom of the sages, is such that whatever it is that you consider to be your music, you've got to let it play. Don't die with your music still in you. No matter what anyone around you says, no matter what the culture might tell you. Maslow's teachings for me that day back in the 1960s said and reaffirmed something I knew. Put the emphasis and the attention of your life on what it is that you can do rather than on what you can't do. Stop giving energy to the things you don't believe in. Stop giving energy to the things that have always not worked for you. Stop giving energy to what other people tell you your life ought to be. And put your energy and your attention on what it is that you want. And you'll hear me talking more about that a little bit later in this program. I'd like to share with you not only what Maslow said as an emphasis, and not only what Piaget had to say to us about there being a genius in you, and that genius has nothing to do with whether or not you conform to the method that things are presented to you, but you have to find the method that fits who you are, and then that genius will emerge. But I'd like to share a quality of these people that seems to run through each and every one of them. And that is that they had very little tolerance for what I call drapery talk, small talk, the superficial, filling their time and their lives and their days with how the draperies looked, or what the weather was like, or any of the things that so fill so many of our days. They had a sense of passion about their lives and about what they were here for. And I want to share with you something that is very beautiful to me. It was written by a woman, whose name is Oriah Mountain Dreamer, a Native American woman, who's been through divorce and single motherhood, raising children on her own. And she went to a party, a gathering one day, one evening, and at the end of the evening, she came back and she was frustrated with the level of conversation and what people were talking about and this whole drapery talk syndrome that so many of you know. All you have to do is listen and you'll hear it around you all the time. Lives of great men all remind us we can make our lives sublime. But you have to listen to the great ones, the men and the women. And Oriah Mountain Dreamer came back and she sat down on her kitchen table late at night and she wrote something called The Invitation. She sent me the book that she was encouraged to write based upon this invitation. So this is what she wrote. And it's an invitation that I am presenting to you. And I'm sure that you'll want to read her book called The Invitation. She says, quote, "It doesn't interest me what you do for a living. I want to know what you ache for, and if you dare to dream of meeting your heart's longing. It doesn't interest me how old you are. I want to know if you will risk looking like a fool for love, for your dream, for the adventure of being alive. It doesn't interest me what planets are squaring your moon. I want to know if you have touched the center of your own sorrow, if you have been opened by life's betrayals, or have become shriveled and closed from fear of further pain. I want to know if you can sit with pain, mine or your own, without moving to hide it, or fade it, or fix it. I want to know if you can be with joy, mine or your own, if you can dance with wildness and let the ecstasy fill you to the tips of your fingers and toes without cautioning us to be careful, to be realistic, to remember the limitations of being human. It doesn't interest me if the story you are telling me is true. I want to know if you can disappoint another to be true to yourself, if you can bear the accusation of betrayal and not betray your own soul, if you can be faithless and therefore trustworthy. I want to know if you can see beauty even when it's not pretty, every day, and if you can source your own life from its presence. I want to know if you can live with failure, yours and mine, and still stand on the edge of the lake and shout to the silver of the full moon, yes. It doesn't interest me to know where you live or how much money you have. I want to know if you can get up after a night of grief and despair, weary and bruised to the bone, and do what needs to be done to feed the children. It doesn't interest me who you know or how you came to be here. I want to know if you will stand in the center of the fire with me and not shrink back. It doesn't interest me where or what or with whom you have studied. I want to know what sustains you from the inside when all else falls away. I want to know if you can be alone with yourself, and if you truly like the company you keep in the empty moments. Oriah Mountain Dreamer, what do you think of that? When my students ask me, what do I have to learn from the people who lived before me, from these great sages, these poets, philosophers, statesmen, artists, and people who refused to die with their music still in them, that they had not only something very profound to offer us based upon what they wrote or expressed in their work, but in the lives that they led. They shared a vision. And I think that vision is expressed in the words of the invitation. They were people who were willing to tell you what sustained them from the inside when all else falls away. And were willing to take and suffer, as Shakespeare said, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. You know, the words that are most quoted by Shakespeare are from Hamlet's "To be or not to be, that is the question." And the reason that they're so quoted is because they are the fundamental question we can ask ourselves in our lives. To be or not to be. That really is the question. The line that follows it, I think, is even more significant. Whether 'tis nobler in the minds of men to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and thus, by opposing, end them. You know, do we want to suffer or end them? Do you want to be or not to be?